Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. It's Russell with Ink and Paper Blog. Happy Saturday. I hope you guys are having a fantastic weekend. I hope it's full of family, fun, relaxation, and of course reading. As I always say, it's a beautiful day here in Northern California. It's an even more beautiful day because I did not go to the work today. For the first time in a very long time, I spent Saturday morning at home, which was really nice. I got up at 5 a.m. and walked my dogs, which is sort of my ritual. I took the dogs out and then I made myself some coffee, fed them, and then I started a new book. And I read that book this morning, which is very irregular for me. I don't normally sit down and read straight through, but 3.5 hours later, I was done. And I absolutely enjoyed the novel. And I thought at the end of it, this is a great book for summer. This is a great summer read. So that sort of inspired me to put together this video. Now, I had seen that Simon over at Savage Reads and Eric at Lonesome Reader had also done some summer reads videos. So theirs are way more comprehensive than mine. Mine is going to be much shorter. But it sort of inspired me to make a couple of recommendations, 6 actually, for summer reads that you may enjoy while you're either going on vacation, getting on a plane, or just plain sitting by the pool on the weekend. Whatever. What I did is I broke this down into 3 backlist titles, so 3 books that did not come out in 2019 and 3 books that did come out in 2019. Sort of mixed it up. All of them have been out for some time except for one, the one that I read today. It just came out, but all of them are easier for you guys to get now that they have been out for a little bit. But I wanted to definitely make some recommendations. So as I always say, get out your pen, get out your paper, get out your Goodreads, however you keep track of your TBR. If you are able to order these books from your independent bookstore, please do so, or have your library order them if they do not already have them on the shelves waiting for you. So let's get started. Of course, we're going to start with the backlist titles. The first is a novel that came out and was longlisted last year for the National Book Award, and that is Gun Love by Jenoff Clement. This book actually takes place in Florida, and if you read it, and when you read it, you will definitely get that summer vibe. It has sort of that heat, that Florida summer humidity tension throughout the pages. The story of a young girl, let me see if I can get her name, it's been a while. Pearl. Pearl is a young girl. She's very small and diminutive, and she has she's very, very pale, very, very white hair. So everyone sort of thinks that she's sort of fairy-like. She lives with her mom, who is a very, very young mother, in a car on the outside of a trailer park in Florida. And she lives in the back seat of a car. And this is really the story of her life when tragedy strikes and she is forced to grow up. What happens is her mom sort of leads this life of, it's not that the mom doesn't care, it's the mom lacks the structure needed to raise a young daughter. And it really thinks that she is in this sort of bohemian way, raising her daughter in the way that would make her daughter the best person she could be. But unfortunately, a tragedy does occur and she loses her mother, and Pearl has to go into the foster system, and her life drastically changes, but also becomes more real for her as she realizes all of the experiences that she's had with her mother have really sort of built who she is as a person and where she is going to go in the life she chooses to lead. This is one of those books, if you are into sort of a family story, a young coming of age story, this book will definitely grasp you. Setting-wise and feeling-wise, it has such a summer feel. I flew through it when I read it. I think I read it in a couple of days. And I think it just has that thing where you can sit down, get lost in Pearl's story, which is what I want in a summer read. I really want to just be engulfed by the books that I'm reading. And that was definitely this one. And so this is Gun Love by Jenoff Clement. Really, really enjoyed this one. The next one is my YA recommendation, and that is Darius the Great is Not Okay by Adib Khorram, and I'm probably saying that wrong, and I apologize. Absolutely, absolutely a wonderful story of a young boy who feels out of place at home. He's half Persian, half white, and he is very sort of introverted and nerdy. And one day his family decides to go back to Iran, where his mom is from, in order for him to see his grandfather, who is very, very ill. And what happens while he's there is that he meets another young boy and creates a friendship and sort of comes into his own. This book is very summer because it has sort of that feeling, you know, those books where someone goes on an adventure or on a trip and they sort of come to self-realization about who they are and become comfortable with who they are. This is a lot to do with family. There is amazing food descriptions in this book. I wanted to fly on a plane to Iran immediately and eat so much food. It was delicious. Darius is such a well-drawn, fantastic young boy. You're really rooting for him. The dynamic of his family is so strong, and there's so much love. And his friendship with the young boy, who I'm totally blanking on his name, Sorab, and their friendship and how that friendship between them fills a gap for both of them. There is something in Sorab's life that sort of keeps him as an outsider, and then Darius has his own issues and mental health issues that he is working through that sort of allow them to share experiences and become just what each other needs at that moment. Again, another book where you can give this to any middle grade YA reader in your life, no matter how old or young they are, and they're really going to just enjoy this story. They will get lost in probably a country that you have not read a ton of books set in. You'll get lost in the food, and you'll get lost just basically in Darius and his life and his family, and it is just an enjoyable read. And that is Darius the Great is Not Okay by Adib Khorram. I also follow Adib on Twitter, and he's just plain adorable. Absolutely like him a lot. The next book I'm going to tell you about is The Golden State by Lydia Kiesling. This is a different type of summer read. This takes place in Northern California, in a fictional town in Northern California, but definitely one, if you are anywhere from Northern California, you will recognize sort of the dynamic. It starts in San Francisco, but the main character is a young mother who has a young daughter, and her husband has been deported and is back and not able to get back into the United States. Our main character is struggling with the sort of all of the pressure that comes with being a young mother. And what she does is she winds up going to this small town in Northern California, to a house that was owned by her grandparents, which is now hers, to sort of reboot her life. And again, this book takes place in the summer. Northern California summers can be very hot and stifling. But what it's also about is the frenetic energy that it takes to raise a young child. I have no idea how parents do it. I have no idea how people do it on their own. It's just crazy. And this book captured for me that better than almost any book that I've ever read. What it does, though, is you get sucked into the life of, let me get her name real quick, Daphne. You get sucked into Daphne's world. Lydia is so good at putting you in Daphne's brain. At times, as Daphne's just going and going and going, your heart rate starts to pick up because the prose is so frenetic that you are just like sitting on the edge of your seat, worried about raising a child, making decisions, having your own life, missing and loving someone so much that you cannot get back. And how does that affect who you are? I just think this book was so good. And I just think it has that thing. I like books, as I said earlier, that really make you realize that you are in the life or in the world of a character, and you can just get sucked in, and you will be sucked into Daphne's life and the people she meets, the town she's in, all of that. So that's The Golden State by Lydia Kiesling, and those were the 3 backlist titles. I'll hold them up right there again from this list. That's Gun Love by Jennifer Clement, Darius the Great is Not Okay by Adib Khorram, and The Golden State by Lydia Kiesling. Okay. Now, for 3 books that came out this year, the first one is The Snakes. I was going to decide if I should have done the one that inspired the video, but I'm going to do that one last. And that's by Sadie Jones. This came out from Harper in June, so you can get your hands on it. And I happen to know that this is out, I think, also in the UK, so you can definitely get your hands on it. Now, The Snakes is the story of a young couple who live in a city, in London, sorry, a city, live in London, and there's the husband is sort of struggling with what he wants to do in life. He works in, I believe, real estate, but he's not happy. He really wants to be an artist. So he and his wife decide that they're going to take off from work. His wife is actually a therapist, and they're going to take some time off from work, and they're going to go on a trip and sort of just rediscover themselves and their relationship. And what happens is they wind up in a little town outside of Paris in a hotel run by the main character's brother. He runs this hotel, but it has clearly not really ever been up and running. And what happens is the parents show up, and it turns out that the husband doesn't quite know everything about the life that his wife comes from. Her father has an immense amount of wealth and unfortunately did not come by it all honestly. And she has tried to distance herself from that. She takes no money from the family. But what happens is an event occurs, a tragedy occurs, and it all starts to sort of swirl around this couple. And the husband doesn't know what, he's enticed by the idea of money. He's enticed by the idea of the intrigue of it all. The wife doesn't know what she wants to do with it, but the tragedy really hits very close to home for her and also for her mother. Her relationship with her parents is just crazy complicated and dark, and just it's so good. This is one of those books. It's a bit of a chunkster, but once you are there at the hotel with this family, you are in, and you want to know what's going to happen. It's a page turner of I don't want to call it a thriller because I don't think it's exactly like a thriller, but definitely the mystery and the what's going on in the book keeps you on the edge of your seat. So you just are going. And it is so good, you guys. And that's The Snakes by Sadie Jones. This is out from Harper, and you can get this now. It came out in June. Okay. For those historical fiction buffs in my viewership, I think that we may have forgotten, and we shouldn't have, about The Lost Girls of Paris by Pam Jenoff. This also, I want to say, came out in May or June, and it is available right now. You can get your hands on it. I don't think Pam Jenoff needs any introduction if you are a fan of historical fiction. She definitely has a back catalog that is very, very well known. But her newest book is about a woman who enters the train station Grand Central Terminal on her way to work, where she finds this briefcase underneath a bench, and she winds up taking it with her, and in it are photographs of women who were spies during World War II. And what she winds up doing is sort of going on sort of this investigative journey into who these women are and how they came to be their roles in World War II. That was an awkward sentence. I'm really, really sorry. Sometimes you have those moments. It says, just here, it's 1946 and you're in Manhattan. When Grace finds an abandoned suitcase, she opens it and she discovers a dozen photographs, each of a different woman. In a moment, she takes them home. She soon learns that the suitcase belonged to a woman named Eleanor Trigg, the leader of a network of female secret agents who were deployed out of London during the war. 12 of these women were sent to occupied Europe as couriers and radio operators to aid the resistance, but they never returned home. That's much more concise than I was saying. I apologize. But I think that sometimes you just need a good historical novel that also has a sense of mystery, puts you in a place and a time. I think that this is one of those books that you could definitely read by the pool with your iced tea or your margarita or however you do your summer pooling and just get lost in. The Lost Girls of Paris by Pam Jenoff. Okay. Last but certainly not least is the book that sort of inspired this entire video, and this is the one that came out the most recently. This came out last week, July 6th, was that last week? And that is The Last Book Party by Karen Dukess. This was very kindly sent to me by Henry Holt in a lovely box, which I opened for you guys on my Instagram. Came with a lovely tote bag, and I literally read this book in 3.5 hours this morning and just loved it. The story of a young woman Eve. You know how I am with names, even though I read this book this morning. Eve is a young woman in the 80s, and she works for a publishing company, but her family has a home on Cape Cod. She comes home basically to stay with them, and at the very beginning in the book, she's invited to a party at the house of a very famous writer and his very famous poetess wife. It turns out that the publishing company that she works for back in New York is published the work of the writer, and he worked for the New Yorker, I want to say, and he is currently writing his memoir. When she's there, she sort of has a dalliance with the son, and it sort of brings her back to this idea of what is she going to do, and what's the life she wanted to lead. She always wanted to be a writer, but she's sort of been stuck. What happens is a promotion opens up at her company, which she is entitled to but passed over for, and she decides to take up the writer on an offer to be his sort of research assistant for the summer. As she goes back to Cape Cod, she moves back in with her family and works for this writer and becomes part really of the household. And what is amazing is that you are just sort of there. You are in Cape Cod. This is one of those stories about a young woman who's trying to find herself. She gets involved in relationships she really shouldn't be involved in, but it really also comes to terms for her on what she wants to do and helps her decide who she is. The last book party is actually a party that's put on by this famous couple every year in the summer in Cape Cod, where everyone comes dressed as a famous character from a book or a novel. Book or a novel. They are the same things, Russell. And what happens is a lot of stuff happens at that party. I don't want to give it away because the story is just so immersive. Eve is a very likable character. She makes some very questionable choices, but you are bought in. Cape Cod is brilliantly depicted in this. You just sort of are swept up in this story. There's also sort of this side story about her relationship with a new author who is about to have his debut novel published, and how that sort of makes her think about her own writing and her relationship with him as well. And that develops in its own way. But here's what I'll say. The Last Book Party is a book that I read in 3.5 hours. Eve is a character I absolutely love, had a story that I was bought into and wanted to finish. I thought Cape Cod was brilliantly depicted throughout the book, and I also just really liked the reverence to the publishing industry, novels, literature, reading in general. This is a book, again, you can just sit out by the pool, or you can take on a plane, or you can do whatever you do in the summer to relax, and The Last Book Party will just take you somewhere and you'll be done before you know it, and you'll love every page. I really, really liked it. I enjoyed it. I was through it. So that is The Last Book Party, a novel by Karen Dukess. This is out from Henry Holt, and it just came out on July 6th. Please get your hands on it. I absolutely recommend it. So those are the 3 titles that came out in 2019. The Snakes by Sadie Jones, The Lost Girls of Paris by Pam Jenoff, and The Last Book Party by Karen Dukess. And I'll put all of them back up here. So those are my 6 recommendations for some summer reads just to get lost into as you go on your vacations, wherever they may be. As always, if this is your first video, thank you so much for stopping by, and I hope that you liked it and you come back for more. If you are new to if you're a return subscriber to my channel, thank you. You guys know how much I love you, and I would not, could not, and absolutely need you in my lives. As always, until next time, I wish you happy reading, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye!